for more of this is the Chief Executive Officer, Cowry Assets Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Great to have you join us from the nation's capital, Mr. Johnson.
Good day, Tolu. Good to have you.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
All right, 11.24% from 11.02%. That's about 0.22% increase. What were you expecting? Some say, I want to put it straight to you, border closure, hiking inflation.
Well, interestingly, I was expecting that the inflation rate would go up. I didn't know it would go up by as much as 22 basis points. Basic thing is that we know that the closure of the border must have led to an increase in mostly food items, particularly those items that are coming through the border. And if you look at the increase in September, you actually relate it with increase in food prices. If you look at, like you rightly pointed out at the opening of your remarks, the food inflation actually increased from 13.17% to 13.51%, which shows that the major increase of that 22 basis point we saw from 11.02% to 11.24% was driven largely by increases in food items. And it would not be far from the fact that the borders were closed, and therefore there was a shift in consumption from mostly rice to now tubers and cereals. A breakdown of the increase in food prices also indicated that most of it came from food items like cereals, like tubers, and one could say there was a shift in consumption as a result of the sharp increase in the price of rice and some of the items that are coming through the land border.
Mr. Johnson, I want to quickly touch on this. It really interests me. The PPRA is coming out to say that about 20% of gasoline deliveries in the country has actually dropped during the first stage of the closure of this border. That's when the partial closure. Now we'll have a full closure. Now, what do you think of this? Before now, we've been hearing of products being smuggled out of the country to be sold where it's not capped. So do you see this as really, do you believe that this has really been happening?
Well, there's no doubt that because of the price disparity between the price of fuel in Nigeria and that of neighboring countries, there is a high level of pull or tendency we're able to move those products from Nigeria to those other countries. I understand from the figures that in my private conversation with the PPMC that the lowest price of fuel or PMS in the neighboring countries is about 200 naira per liter. Now, some of those countries are actually buying a liter of fuel for as high as 400 naira per liter. So if it's sold here at just 145 naira per liter, you can imagine the kind of spread or margin that the smugglers will be attracted to if they move those products outside the country. And remember, we have a huge land border. So it's actually very difficult to police the entire land border. So I don't rule out the fact that a total closure of the border would have led to some reduction in consumption. But there are also other factors that may have also contributed to the reduction in consumption, which over time we'll begin to measure, such as the heavy rainfall that we've experienced in the past couple of months. And as you know, when the weather is very wet, when the environment is very wet, people don't move around a lot. So fuel consumption is expected to actually increase from the month of October or from the month of November when we start moving around as the rain subsides. So you have to, that may not have to be factored in, because you saw a period of August, September, and the first half of October. We've seen very heavy rains, which kept a lot of people indoors and reduced the level of mobility that we normally encounter or experience here. So by the time we look at the November and December figures, we now need to be able to measure whether the entire reduction in consumption was attributed to the closure of the border, or also weather conditions also contributed.
Okay, now even core inflation at this time is also on the higher side, 8.94% from 8.68%. Now, I want to talk a little bit on the food aspect. With all of the efforts being made by the Central Bank, Bank of Agriculture, pumping enough of money into that sector, some have even come up to say we might be able to feed ourselves. Mr. Johnson, do you see that happening anytime soon? Can we bridge this gap?
Yes, with time. It may not be so soon, but with time, we will be able to feed ourselves. But let me also mention this. There's no country that's completely independent of food items from other countries. There are some food items we consume here that are not produced here, either due to climatic conditions. You can't produce wheat in the country, in Nigeria, unless you're going to win Nigerians of rice, bread consumption and similar products. There are certain products we still have to import. But the reality is that most countries eat what they produce, because food is also a cultural thing. And people tend to eat what they were brought up eating. If you grew up in the north, you eat a lot of cereal. Those from the south eat a lot of tuber. And because these are food items that are grown in those locations. So ideally, we should have the concept of eating largely. We should groom our children with the food we produce locally. But the key food element that we're importing today are the likes of wheat, the likes of rice, and with the closure of the border and the lot of investment going into rice production, hopefully we'll get to a point where we may be able to produce enough rice to meet local consumption.
The Customs Service wants importers and exporters to use the seaports. Considering the congestion we have, coupled with the road infrastructure challenge, rail not functional. Now, how do you see people shifting focus from land to sea?
Let me tell you, most of the food items that are imported through the land borders are largely smuggled. The large quantity of those, anybody who's going to bring in any food item up to a container size will not bring it through the land borders. The products you see coming from the land borders are mostly smuggled, or those who don't want to pay the appropriate duties and customs tariffs on those items. The challenge you have, so what I'm saying in effect that you are not likely going to see a sharp increase in cargoes coming in through the seaports because of the closure of the border. The challenge we have in the seaports are there, and they will still persist. But I don't expect a major uptick in cargo for coming in through the seaports as a result of the closure of the borders, because most items that come through the land borders are largely smuggled items. But that doesn't take away the burdens, the bottlenecks that the seaports are creating in this economy. It's unfortunate that we're not really doing much to expand our infrastructure supply as it relates to the seaports. We still do not have a deep seaport, despite the fact that we have deep sea in several parts of the country, in Rivers, in Bonny area, in Akwa Ibom, in Bayelsa. We have places we can actually build deep seaports, but we have not done that. We've not even expanded, dredged the Calabar seaport so that containerized cargoes can go there.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, now I want us to now look at the effect of this directive on local manufacturers. We've seen the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, LCCI, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, all coming out to say there are a lot of negatives in these moves as regards to manufacturers, coupled with the fact that the AFCFTA is also on the pipeline. I don't know how this comes to you.
Well, for the manufacturers, maybe they are referring to, because now the ban is also restricting exports of goods through the land border. And the case of Nigeria is that the neighboring countries that buy Nigerian goods only have them delivered through the land border. It's a different thing when you talk of the import. The simple reason that there are no originating cargoes from this country to other countries. So if you really want to ship products from Nigeria to Ghana or to Ivory Coast, you might need to go first ship them to Antwerp in Belgium before you bring them to ship them back to a West African country, because we do not have cargoes and shipping companies that actually have the route, the West African route at their corridor. So you really have to open the borders to allow for goods that are produced locally to go to the West African countries. You can't shut the two ends, otherwise you'll be shooting yourself in the foot, because you do not have the facilities to export goods, containerized goods from here to the neighboring West African countries. A number of African products are exported from here, even some level of manufactured products. The likes of the brewery ship export their products from Nigeria to neighboring countries. They like some of these fast-moving consumer goods manufacturers like Nestle, Cadbury. They have their products produced here and exported to West African countries. So if you shut down the borders, and that shutting also includes export of products from the country, we will be hurting ourselves. So the government has to consider creating a window for export of products. Then on the second aspect of your question, which relates to African Continental Free Trade Agreement, The closure of the borders, we must recognize it must be a very interim measure. We have signed to a common customs tariff and agreement that will open up the borders of African countries and allow free movement of goods and free movement of business people across Africa. So you will be breaching that agreement once it becomes effective. Of course, it's not yet effective. The operational guidelines are yet to come up to be concluded. But when it becomes effective, you really can't do that. But added to that is the fact that we must evolve a process or a system that will protect our country in terms of dumping. But I don't think the closure of the border would be a permanent solution to it. We need to be able to produce economically and efficiently and cost effectively so that people and manufacturers will come here and set up manufacturing outfits. Otherwise, when we are running away from imported goods through the Benin and Togolese seaports, will be worse because companies will come and set up manufacturing outfits in those countries and they will export in Nigeria, targeting Nigeria as their main market.
Mr. Johnson, before I let you go, just one word. We have just 1 minute. Rice, tomatoes, poultry foods, sugar. Many say it will be more expensive at this time. Nigerians want to know, what are your thoughts? Do you believe anything will happen price at this moment?
Well, interestingly, the price of those items have already gone up. Canned tomatoes, because we're really not canning tomato here. Sugar, refined sugar, most of them are coming into the land borders because of restrictions. The prices have all gone up, including the price of rice. But even with the total closure of the borders, I can tell you that some of these things are still finding their way into the country. What has happened is that the prices have now reflected the additional cost of smuggling those items into the country. The ultimate solution to dumping of products in your country is to develop the capacity to produce those products. If you do not have the capacity to produce those products, I can assure you, you really cannot close your border completely, because as long as there's demand for any product that cannot be produced locally, people will find ways to get them into your market.